ahead. 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329. Open phones. We're going to talk about the First Amendment and how UND wrapped up that Snapchat controversy. Straight ahead. Don't go away.
It got everyone's attention, and that's the purpose of a letter to the editor, Matthew Becker. And a lot of us inside the political world knew who Matthew was. Matthew, very intelligent, very good at his job. If you're on the opposite side of the aisle like I am from Matthew, he's the guy that you want to be on your team. He's the guy that you kind of shake your head and say, well, that's one of the reasons that they're winning out there. And he was part of that. Former campaign manager, communications for Kevin Cramer, moved up through the ranks, interim director of the North Dakota GOP, the head of the North Dakota Republican Party is what we're talking about here. He sent a letter to the editor that said, you know what, we just can't do this with Donald Trump. And I read it 2-3 times. And what I read most of all was I read loyalty to the not North Dakota, but nationally to the Republican Party. I did. I didn't read it as though, boy, Matt just came over to my side of the aisle. That isn't what I read at all. I read, no, this guy could be the death of the Republican Party. No one's going to think Republican after Donald Trump. That's what I took it for. And I told Callie, I said, find him. I just want to talk to him on air. Matthew, good to have you on News and Views.
Great to be with you, Joel. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to write a letter like that because you and I both have been around this enough where you know that you've burnt some bridges now. What reaction did you get from a lot of your Republican friends back home?
I have to tell you, I have had a really positive reaction from people that I haven't talked to or spoken with in many years, people that I worked with, people that I didn't even work with, but I knew that I haven't spoken to in 5 or 10 years. And people are telling me they've sent it on to their friends. And it's really the reason I wrote this letter. I mean, I had no intention of stepping back into politics, frankly, after leaving Congressman Cramer's office. I decided to go to business school. I'm at UCLA, and I decided to ultimately take a political break. And it was watching this election, Joel, and you watch this election, and it's like the Twilight Zone. It is truly shocking what is happening. I mean, one of the candidates running for president is patently unqualified for office. He has no interest in facts. He's an infomercial huckster. He's a reality TV star. He traffics in conspiracy theories. And most concerning for Republicans should be the fact that he is ignorant of and seems to be indifferent to the U.S. Constitution. And ultimately, I'm looking out at this election and I'm just thinking, I just can't sit idly by anymore.
Do you think Donald Trump is, in fact, a Republican?
I do not. I think we are looking at a New York Democrat who is a marketing genius. And I think he's conned the Republican Party by exploiting the very darkest fears that people have. And I'm not going to deny the fact that, again, he's a marketing genius, and he's been able to do this so effectively because he takes what he thinks this caricature of a Republican is and exploits it. And then he ends up in all these awkward positions trying to defend really radical and crazy ideas, like building this wall and deporting everyone. And it's almost like you're watching a guy who's listened to conservative radio for a while and is trying to pretend to be a Republican. And what he's doing now is a result of that. He's out there trying to defend all these ideas that he's ginned up, thinking, well, this is what they want, right? And you listen to him, and that's why he's out on town halls with Sean Hannity on television, saying things like, well, asking the audience, turning it into Family Feud, asking, should we deport him? Should we not? I don't know. You tell me. And that's a guy who clearly has no compass, no compass morally, no compass politically. I don't think he ever has. I think the only compass that Donald Trump has is what's good for Donald Trump. And you take a look at what he's done with his taxes, proudly proclaiming, yeah, that makes me smart if I don't pay taxes. This is a guy who's only interested in himself. And I think that everything we know about Donald Trump is telling us that this is a guy who is completely self-obsessed and has no interest in helping the country. He's not paying taxes. He's not at all interested in anything but seeing his name on buildings. And now we expect him to be a public servant and to spend the time and the energy it takes and to be sitting in that Oval Office for 8 years or 4 years or whatever it is. We think he's going to take that seriously. I just don't think that's a logical conclusion.
Matthew Becker is our guest. He's the former executive director of the North Dakota Republican Party. Matthew, I have to say this. I truly don't, with all the Republicans that I've met and worked with and sparred against, and you know, I don't think he's a Republican either. I don't. And I think that the Republicans who tell me that what's my options, Joel? My option is if I elect Hillary, I can't stand Hillary, and then the Democrats win, and so he's really my option. And I look at them, and I say, your party is at much, much greater risk if he wins. You're way better off if he loses than if he wins. And I truly believe that, Matthew, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I would totally agree with that, and I think that's one of the main reasons that a Republican can, in good conscience, support Hillary Clinton. I believe that at the end of the day, a Trump presidency could be unsurvivable for the Republican Party, could be ultimately unsurvivable for the country. I truly think that we're playing Russian roulette with human history here if we're going to talk about electing a man who, again, has no interest in facts and no interest in this country whatsoever. And so the irony here, I think the great irony, is that Hillary Clinton, if she defeats Donald Trump, hopefully, could be the person who actually saves the Republican Party from itself. Because at the end of the day, I think a Trump candidacy can probably be walked back. I think the Republican Party can say in 2 years when they're up for the midterms, look, we're not that party, okay? We're not Donald Trump's Republican Party. This is not us. But if the Republican Party elects as its president Donald Trump, I don't think there's any taking that back. I think that means that permanently stamped on the GOP, a party that's been around since 1860. I mean, parties don't last forever, and I think that would be the death knell.
Matthew, when you take a look at where this thing is shaking out, where it's heading, how did we get to here? I mean, the grand old party has such a rich tradition in this country. If you look at your nominees, even ones that didn't succeed for you, didn't become president. I mean, I'm looking at men like John McCain and Bob Dole and Mitt Romney. These are good men. I mean, these are good, decent people. I mean, how did you get to a place? Is it social media? Is it how many different sources of medium we have now that we can get information from? How did we get to a place where Donald Trump could be the head of one of the two major parties?
I think it's a combination of a lot of partisanship that we've seen in this country over the last 10, 20 years. And I think people dismiss that notion and say, partisanship isn't that big of a deal. People talk about it, but it's not that bad. I really do think that partisanship has gotten out of control. I think 10, 20, 30 years ago, if you had a person like Donald Trump running for president, I don't think you'd see him gaining a minimum bar of 40 to 45% in national polls. I think there are so many people in the Republican Party, due to the intense lines that have been drawn between Republicans and Democrats over the last, especially 10 years, that they see those lines and they think that I have to vote for this person because they have an R in front of their name. And at the end of the day, that is what is, I think, driving this pull towards Donald Trump. And you have people in the Republican Party who are validating him. You have some that aren't, but by and large, most Republican elected officials are validating him. And I just don't think that someone like this 20 years ago would have made it, because there was a much greater willingness in the country of people to split tickets and to vote for someone like Senator Hoeven and then go vote for Hillary Clinton, or vote for someone like Congressman Cramer and then go to vote for Hillary Clinton. And just being able to make that conclusion based not on just party, but based on personality, psychology, based on the political positions, of which I don't think Donald Trump has any. And so I think that's one of the biggest factors that has led to Trump. And of course, the other factor is the media, and the media's relentless coverage of this person who, again, is a marketing genius who has learned to put out invective that will immediately get him covered.
Well, you couldn't be more right. It's two-pronged. You're right. It's the how partisan this country has gotten, and then the fact that he doesn't even have to buy an ad. He gets all the free media he wants. If he wants something to be on the 6 o'clock news tonight, all he has to do is know exactly how he's going to say it. He learned that through reality TV. So let's go to the partisan issue in the little bit of time I have left with you. Why do you think we're this partisan now? Why do you think we're so partisan way beyond any of other time periods in our country?
I think that the direction of the country has been going that way for some time. I don't know why that is where we're headed. I don't understand why 20 years ago or 25 years ago, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan had a great relationship, and today, we have such divisiveness between Congress and the president. I see history in a lot of ways as an ebb and a flow, and I think that we're on one end of the spectrum. And I've often said to people that I left politics because I thought we're at this extreme end of partisanship, and I do think it will bounce back. I think the rubber band of history will swing us back in the other direction, where again we'll have agreement and more rationality in our politics. But I think we're definitely seeing the results. Trump is the conclusion of this partisanship that we've had in the country. And I just want to say this. And I worked for Congressman Cramer for many years, as you mentioned. And one of the things that I most appreciated about Congressman Cramer, and I think that makes him a great public servant, is not only is he very intelligent and very thoughtful, but he's also very intellectually curious, and he wants to learn. And I saw that in action when he was elected. He goes out there, he's a Republican, but he listens to Democrats. When he was elected to Congress, he brought people into his office, and he wanted to learn from them. And what we look at in Donald Trump is the exact opposite of that. This is a guy who has spent 16 months of this campaign refusing to learn basic fundamentals about our system of government. He doesn't understand the Constitution. And then suddenly we expect that after having his ignorance validated on Election Day, that he's going to go into the Oval Office and suddenly be willing to listen to people and be willing to learn. I just don't think that's likely.
Matt, what have you heard from Congressman Cramer? He was one of the first to endorse Donald Trump. Have you heard from him since he wrote this letter?
I have not, but I actually will be on air with him this afternoon. We're going to be on air together. And so I look forward to talking about this with him. And I think we'll find a lot of areas of agreement, frankly.
You can be hungry for knowledge all you want. If you don't absorb it, it's not going to do any good. And so I wish you luck, because you're actually using what you learned. So, Matt, I hope you're not done with politics. I hope you run someday. I think you'd be good at it. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Joel.
Matthew Becker, ladies and gentlemen.